Stop. I know. Do not comment. I understand. I get it. You can save your breath. You can save your text. I know. I'm late. I'm late. Yes, I'm fully aware that this video should have came out early January 2026 or in December 2025, where I'm going to do a video titled The Top 30 Strongest Characters as of 2025. Bruh, where are you at? I understand. I get it. And technically speaking, I did do a stream on my Twitch and my Cold Requiem YouTube channel for this subject with the tier 3 Twitch boys. I did do that. So shout out to my Discord and shout outs to the tier 3. It was toxic, obviously. It was many hours, obviously, but we did do a top 30. So in order to change things up and make it more viable for late February, this is gonna be 2025 plus. Ooh. Oh, we're gonna be having a new list where the list is modified, and I think it's way too more liking to how I set it up, where this is a list that I would gauge right now as of early 2026 and all of 2025. Because with the latest chapters of One Piece, there's been, I think, a shift here and there in a lot of perceptions of certain characters. One in particular, Loki, like what? So I think people are way more comfortable with putting this character much higher than first perceived. One, two, is that it is, I think, a little more interesting if we do things like this and just kind of focus on what happened last year, because last year is now, again, 2 months behind. So on that note, on that front, you're getting a unique list today. And of course, the controversy is going to be abundant, very abundant. I understand that people aren't gonna like what I want to say, but that's okay, because for those that do like what I say, I appreciate you, of course, obviously. And the power scaling, like Blackbeard says, Owarene, it never ends, okay? It is a battle shonen, and power scaling does matter in a battle shonen, no matter what anybody says. So, on that note, enough dilly-dallying, because I'm already late. The top 30 strongest characters as of 2025 plus. Number 30 is Boa Hancock. Number 29 is Crocodile. Number 28 is Yasop of the Red Hair Pirates. Number 27 is Gunko. Number 26 that share the same spot together are Zoro and Sanji. Number 25 is City of the Rain. Number 24 are the 5 elders of One Piece, with the exception of Figureland Garling. Number 23 is Eustace Captain Kidd, aka Eustace Captain Nido. Number 22, they share the same spot together, are Rayleigh and Scopper Gaybone. Number 21 is Lucky Roo of the Red Hair Pirates. Number 20, who share the same spot together, are Garp Chujo and Sengoku the Buddha. Number 19 is Trafalgar D, Water Law. 18 is Greenbull. 17 is Fujitora. 16 is Sabo. 15 is Kizaru. 14 is Figureland Garling. 13 is Otototo Ben Beckman of the Red Hair Pirates. 12 is Figureland Shamrock. Shamrock is 12. Number 11 is Kuzan, aka Aokiji the Blue Pheasant. Number 10 is Dracul Mihoku. Number 9 is Loki. Number 8 is Luffy. Number 7, put a star on his name, is Monkey D. Dragon. Number 6 is Blackbeard. 5, Akainu. 4 is Big Mom. 3 is Kaido. 2 is Emu. And 1 is the red-haired wonder himself, Shanks. Now, guide your system.
Oh my god, your list is so trash. How could you? Mine is so better. You don't understand the series at all.
Get out there. Come on, come on. I'll give you a few seconds to get off your chest, okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now that all of the rabble-rousers, the troublemakers are gone, let's dive into the finer details. The PB&J, meat potatoes, about why it is what it is, as to why characters are ranked where they are ranked. I do want to say this off the rip. I'm gonna start off in the high spots first. I, right now, still have Dragon over Luffy only because I still believe to a degree of shonen tropes. The main character isn't stronger or superior than his father figure or his parent figure. They're not stronger than them until something happens between the two. And then once that something happens, it becomes the gateway to open up for the main character to be even stronger than that. And normally it happens around the end game of the story, sometimes in the midline of the story, and then sometimes like right off the gate. But that being said, I think that Luffy, you could argue, is still weaker than Dragon. But again, it's only because of shonen tropes, at least how I view them. And I would say that come the end of Elbaf, it's gonna be really hard for me to adhere to those shonen tropes. I won't lie to that, right? Because by then, Luffy has already figured out and understand that in order to do last damage to immortal beings, he has to utilize Conqueror's Haki in a unique way, potentially. And then once he figures out that, then the sky is the limit, because at that point in time, he should be making paces to be on that Joy Boy level of Haki that we saw on Agate Island. So I think it's gonna be really hard to suggest that Monkey D. Dragon is gonna be on that tier when his full powers are showcased. Maybe it will be, but I think when it's all said and done, which should be at the end of this year, Luffy should be over Dragon. That's what I think should happen, but we see what the future holds. And as of late, Loki is looking bananas, man. Loki has an insane flashback that really showcases prowess of power with his hammer Ragnir and his ability, but then in real time we get to see Loki transform in a full-on mythical zone form of whatever it is, and it is very imposing. There's even a sort of prophecy for it on Elbaf, and Loki can already completely dismantle a Draugr with a single swing. A Draugr who is several times the size of him, and can also utilize lightning bolts that just come down from the heavens, and these are huge bolts. His existence seems to be already forming lightning storms and snow, very similar to Kaido on Wano Country and Onigashima, where him simply existing changed the weather around them. So the dragon features of Kaido are somewhat happening here with Loki, and since we have dialogue in the flashback when Loki and Rox are talking to each other, and he mentions the sun god Nika, the destroyer of the world, and then Rox mentions how the only person that has that power to do that is your father, alluding to the power that Loki has now, this unique sort of potentially Nidhogg or Fenrir, maybe even its own sun god Nika, but like the destruction version of that, who knows? But the idea is simple though. This power that he wields could be a power that can destroy it all, quote unquote. It's a very similar line to what Sengoku mentioned about Whitebeard's power, the power to like destroy the world. So Loki just has immense power, and even though he's pretty wounded because of Shamrock and Gunko, I would at this point in time put him in the top 10 just based on what we've seen and what I said about his abilities. But I would still say relative to Luffy, he should still be under Luffy. So Luffy and Loki are probably very close in power, but I would still lean towards Luffy come the end of the day until further notice. Now, I believe that Kaido and Big Mom are still alive at this point in time, and I do put Shanks over Emu, because Shanks is the only person that has the Haki that's closest to what we saw with Joy Boy on Agate Island, though his had hostility when we saw something similar on Wano Country when he powered down Green Bull from like dozens of miles away. So I feel like when it comes to Shanks, his feats, his Haki, he is the greatest Haki practitioner in the story that's alive right now. I think it's bar none. And Oda in so many ways is making Haki, at least a certain level of Haki and a certain application of Haki, be like the best of in the story, particularly Conqueror's Haki, right? So if the best practitioner of Haki is also being bolstered by the author's intent of raising the importance of Haki in the series to where you can take down immortal beings, one, and then two is that at a certain point of Haki, you're doing what Joy Boy is doing, you're transcending all things, then yes, by default you put Shanks in the #1 spot. Obviously, the more Loki does, the more upscale it is for Shanks. We know that Shanks at some point did subdue Loki, brought him back to Elbaf, and then he was restrained on Elbaf. Now, the details of that we don't know. We don't know what happened exactly. Was it actually a fight? Was it a negotiation? Is it a plan? Sit down, talk? Who knows? We have no idea. But right now, it still looks good for Shanks relative to Loki. It's the same thing that we know about in the pre-time skip with Kaido and Shanks, where Shanks was en route to Marineford. He ran into Kaido. There was altercation of some kind, according to Marines, and then Shanks is the one that arrives there, not Kaido. So we don't know the deets of that. We do not know what happened, okay? It could have been an actual fight or a scuffle. It could have been a sit-down talk, a deal was made, so on and so forth. We don't know. We do not know what happened there. But it doesn't matter what you think happens there. That doesn't matter, all right? At the end of the day, when Shanks is the one that arrives to Marineford and not Kaido, it only looks better for Shanks until Oda reveals the full details about what happened between Kaido and Shanks before Shanks arrived to Marineford. So Shanks just has way too much upscale across the entire company of the story, and he is the character that Oda does gas the most. It is what it is. So Shanks is God King #1. Now, moving away from those cats and then moving on to some other changes I made. I did decide to put Figureland Shamrock over Figureland Garling. Part of which is, of course, because of what happened in the God Valley flashback, or lack thereof, honestly, where Oda decided not to really show us what happened in full detail between Shamrock and Rocks. But Rocks did beat Shamrock and company 2 times over, which I'm not too mad at per se, because it's Rocks the Zebek. Rocks did get scuffed up during those fights, but we don't see those details exactly. And again, when you're losing to Rocks, it's not really that shameful, A. But then B, Oda does say that, you know, Figureland Garling is strong, and there's a good reason for that, which I do believe. A great time to show some of that would have been God Valley, Oda, but whatever. But Garling, I think now, for sure, is stronger than the other elders. And I would also say that he probably has the very good power that he got from Emu. I'm guessing not the Gyuki, but some new power. And it's probably pretty busted. However, Figureland Shamrock does do an immense amount of damage to Loki when Homeboy is pinned down. Gunko does do a lot of work on him for sure, that's not a question. But jumping ahead real quick, Gunko, I think for sure was going to lose to Scopper Gabon. She did use Colin as a chess piece against Scopper, and that's why she beat Scopper, ultimately speaking. But at the end of the damn day, I do believe that Scopper was going to beat Gunko in that one-on-one altercation. At the same time though, with Figureland Shamrock, when he does do all that damage to Loki, the way I perceive it now is that most of the damage that Loki took was probably from Shamrock and his Cerberus sword that did the crazy roundabout, because the way Loki talks about that attack, like that attack was gonna actually like almost kill him. Loki, we know, is insanely tough. As a baby, he survived the fall from the Sun Realm to the Hell Realm. And it's not far off to say, at least I think, that his physical stats are probably just as good as his dad's, Harald's. So if Harald could jump off the red line and jump from the red line to the blue sea when he had rocks on his shoulder, then I think that Loki could do the same thing. He could jump from the red line to the blue sea and he'd be fine. He'd be okay. And even though his powers are strained by sea stone, his body is still an apex, like ancient giant physique, probably upscaled to a much higher extent for someone like Loki and Harald. And yet, Shamrock's crazy Hauser missile swords, just 1, 2, 3, that would probably kill me, and it's gonna take him months to recover fully. So I'm going to accredit most of that damage to Shamrock, way less so for Gunko at this point in time. And that's why I'm scaling Shamrock higher than his father. And that's just his Cerberus sword. The man himself probably has his own insane skills, techniques, haki. And in the Elbaf flashback, you can kind of see how Shamrock, when he talks to Shanks, he does view himself as superior than any other holy knight. He knew that he was different. He was special, which would only validate the reason why he has this insane Cerberus sword, where no other, as far as you can see, no other holy knight has that privilege. That is something that Emo only grants to those that have the Abyssal Covenant. He has on his sword. To me, Shamrock is someone that I gotta look at a little bit better, and I think that there's a good chance, not of course confirmed, but a good chance that it could be stronger than Admiral. The fact that when you had Killingham and Summers come in there to replace Shamrock, that means that in some sense, Emu does view that Shamrock, if you're going to replace him, you need at least 2 other Holy Knights there to do what Shamrock could probably do by himself, right? So at the bare minimum, 2 Holy Knights equals 1 Shamrock. So for the time being, I am put Shamrock in like the higher rung of the Admiral tier, Rounder Kuzan. Speaking of Admiral, I think that my gatekeeper for the Admiral rank is still Trafalgar D. Waterlaw, where he is the closest person, if not actually at Admiral level, but he's like a hair underneath guys like Green Fujitora. What he has showcased to this day, I still think is some of the best in the entire series. Respect from Kaido, Big Mom, and Blackbeard, 3 Emperors of the Sea, and just knowing that because he fought against Blackbeard, who counters the fruit specifically with his powers of the Yami Yami no Mi, and that's Law's strong suit, he comes to that fight with a big disadvantage, and he still forced BB at the end of that Winter Island fight to really be huffing and puffing all of his boys. So yes, I do give Law a lot of credit as a fighter. The guy is not Admiral or Admiral level, and I give the same courtesy to Garp and Sengoku. Now with Garp and Sengoku, something that we see in the God Valley flashback is that Garp and Sengoku, the way they have the sort of rivalry or bickering, it felt very similar, very akin to rivals that we see nowadays. Let's say Scopper and Rayleigh, let's say Zoro and Sanji, Inu and Neko, things of that sort too, right? So even though normally I do put Sengoku over Garp, only because I assume, at least in terms of different powers, his powers will not wane over time the same way physical strength will wane. We know that Whitebeard can do the same exact tilt that we see in Marineford that we see in the Odin flashback. But when he was younger, probably easier to do, less stamina. And when he's older, more stamina, hard to do. But he can still do it. Let's say 40 years later in the future, let's say for Two Piece, we have Robin when she's 70 plus years old. She could still use Demonio Fleur, but it requires more stamina for her to use given her old age. Let's say an 80-year-old Doflamingo, can he still utilize his Delphi Awakening? He probably can. His physical strength may wane, of course, but his power should still be what they are because they've already gone through that process of awakening, of certain techniques, applications, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea. I've always had for Sengoku, where Prime Garp and Sengoku, I lean towards Prime Garp, but Old Man Garp and Sengoku, I'll lean towards Sengoku. But I think in that God Valley flashback, given how Garp and Sengoku interact, you could argue they're actually kind of parallel to each other in strength. So I put Garp and Sengoku in the same tier. In the same way I would do Inu and Neko, in the same way I would do Dory and Brogy, in the same way I am doing Scopper, Gabon, and Rayleigh. I think that Scopper Gabon is just as strong as Rayleigh. So if you take Rayleigh and put him on Elbaf, the exact same outcomes would happen bar for bar. The exact same outcomes. If you take Gabon and you put him on Shabondi in the pre-time skip, the exact same things happen bar for bar. That's why I see it. Which only helps solidify what is damn near confirmed at this point in time to be the case. Zoro and Sanji, equal. Equal, 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 equal. I did a whole video breaking it down. I'm not gonna do it again, because I don't need to do it again. At this point in time, Zoro and Sanji are on the same level. Full stop. There are times where Zoro does get his buff first. So let's say he's ahead of Sanji at that point in time. Or let's say Sanji gets his buff first and then he's ahead of Zoro. But at the end of the damn day, boom, 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 equal. That's how Zoro and Sanji have got to be. Though I don't treat Kid and Law the same way. No, I think that because Emperors of the Sea, they always acknowledge Law more than do Kid. And there's no other context that offsets that in Kid's favor, with the exception that Kid has Conqueror's Haki, which he does. Kid does have Conqueror's Haki. How much that matters, I think it's up to you. I think some would say it matters a lot, which I think it kind of does. However, with respect to Law's abilities, where he's giga cracked, even though Kid does have better Haki on paper, Law's powers are so beyond the pale, you just have to respect it. So I do edge out Law over Kid. However, I do think that Kid should still be in that sort of rank that is parallel in some way to the Admirals, where he's not Admiral level, but he's close to Admiral level. I know folks hate to hear that, but Kid does have an assortment of insane feats that we've seen throughout the entirety of Wano Country, particularly endurance and durability feats. They cannot be ignored. I know folks wanted the world from Kid, I understand that, but I think that it is fair nonetheless to say that he should be relative to Law in some capacity. And considering how their rivalry is of the current era, it's not like, something that happened 12 years ago that no longer applies, aka the Shanks and Mihawk rivalry before Homeboy even went to the Holy Land, before Fisher Tiger. Unlike that situation, Law and Kid was literally prevalent like a month ago in the story, or like a few weeks ago in the story, however long it was when they left Wild Country. So I think that Law and Kid, if Kid's still alive, they have to still be relative to each other. And then I guess finally is that you've noticed too on my list, I have all of the top end red hair pirates, the ones that are mentioned in the ultimate chapter by name, also on my list. I believe that as time goes on, the greater their crew looks. And because of the Loki stuff, it only upscales Shanks, thereby upscaling the entire crew relative to Shanks. I honestly gotta believe that in terms of a crew dynamic, King the Wildfire and Queen the Plague and Kata Curry and Smooth Thick and Cracker and Jack the Drought, that's how that worked for Big Mom and Kaido, but I do not believe that should apply at all to Shanks's crew. Shanks's crew should be some sort of hybrid between like Roger's crew and then those guys, to where Roger had guys like Gabon and Rayleigh who were insanely powerful and at their peaks probably just as good, if not even better than Admirals, which I'd put Ben Beckman in that spot right now. Ben Beckman, I think, honest to God, right now should be comparable to a prime Rayleigh or a prime Scopper Gabon. We've already seen Loki bridge the gap between the old generation and the new gen in power. They are not that far off at all. And it's only Shanks that has the comparison to Joy Boy at this point in time in terms of hockey utilization. Even in terms of feats, we haven't seen Rocks power down someone the same way we saw Shanks power down Green Bull and Admiral. Again, other things matter like physical strength and durability and stamina and X, Y, and the other. All I'm trying to say here is that I think that it's very clear now. You cannot say that the old generation of power level and story is that much higher, if at all, compared to the new gen, because Loki helps bridge that gap. And that would apply to all the top end crews and all the top end pirates. And the Red Hair Pirates as a whole get additional upscale. That's right. They get additional upscale. Why? Because we found out that among all of the pirate armadas that exist in the entirety of the series, among the emperors, the Red Hair Pirates have the weakest fleet. They have the weakest armada. Blackbeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Luffy, Buggy, all of them have better fleets and armadas than Shanks's boys. Which means what? Which means you have to upscale the core crew. So if Ben Beckman is just as good as a prime Rayleigh and a prime Scopper relative to Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo, and Yasop, who are also mentioned by name in the other chapter, they need to be somewhat relevant. Yasop is probably at that first division post that we see King the Wildfire Marco in. And for Lucky Roo, I would scale higher than Yasop. I'll probably put him in that same under Admiral, if not at Admiral tier, where Law is. And Ben Beckman would be where Kuzan is, where he's slightly above that Admiral rank. In the future, I think it's undeniable that you'll see Zoro and Sanji surpass Ben Beckman, thereby surpassing Rayleigh and Scopper in their primes, but not at this point in time. They'll be there soon enough. So in the near future, Zoro and Sanji will be where probably Kuzan is right now. But again, not yet. You can say that's cap, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But this is how I view the top 30 strongest characters in One Piece as of 2025 plus. Loki has got to be respected a lot more because of the crazy heraldic glaze, him bridging the gap between the two eras, and his power being so touted by Rocks that it could end it all. But at the same time, Monkey D is still Monkey D. Dragon right now is like a storytelling trope gap for Luffy, and at least that's what I view. And also Seed of the Rain, he's in the same way too, where I think in storytelling, I think that Seed of the Rain should be stronger than Zoro up until Zoro beats him. But honestly, that one's tough for me, but I may put Seed of the Rain under Zoro come the end of Elbaf too. That could be possible as well. Yeah, I'm not gonna deny that, because Elbaf should be a major junction point to like the last stretch of the story. And if you only have, let's say, only 2 or 3 more arcs left after Elbaf, are we really gonna be focused on Seed of the Rain at that point in time? The only way it works, I think, in Seed of the Rain's favor is if BB makes a play on Emu. But you guys know my stance on that one. So let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. If you enjoy your boys' video content, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click on that bell to join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys and gals on the flip side.